The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to everything in the hospital room, a constant, suffocating reminder of the battle being waged within its walls. Park Bo-gum sat beside his son's bed, his hand dwarfed by the tubes and wires snaking around the small, pale arm. Min-jun. His little Min-jun. The doctors, usually so full of brisk pronouncements and carefully measured hope, had fallen silent. That silence, Park knew, was more terrifying than any grim diagnosis. "There's nothing more we can do, Mr. Park," Dr. Lee had finally said, his face etched with a professional sadness that couldn't quite mask the underlying defeat. "The tumor is unresponsive. We've exhausted all options." Park had heard the words, understood the clinical meaning, but his mind refused to accept them. Exhausted all options. His son was only 6 years old. He had a gap-toothed grin and a boundless curiosity about the world, a world he might never fully explore. He looked at Min-jun, his chest rising and falling shallowly beneath the thin hospital blanket. The boy's eyes were closed, his brow furrowed even in sleep. Park smoothed a stray lock of hair from his forehead, his heart aching with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. "He's comfortable," Dr. Lee had added, a hollow consolation. Comfort wasn't enough. Comfort wasn't life. The sun, a pale disk behind the smog that perpetually hung over Seoul, cast a weak ray of light across the room. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air, each one a tiny, fleeting moment of existence. Park felt a surge of anger, a desperate refusal to surrender. He wouldn't accept this. He couldn't. He spent the next few weeks in a daze, a chaotic blend of denial and frantic research. He scoured medical journals, consulted with specialists across the globe, clinging to any shred of possibility, any whisper of a new treatment, a forgotten cure. But the answers were always the same: inoperable, terminal, palliative care. One day, staring blankly out the hospital window, he saw him. An old man, tending to the small, neglected garden patch at the edge of the hospital grounds. The gardener. Park had seen him before, a quiet, unassuming figure who seemed to blend into the background. He was always there, patiently pruning, watering, coaxing life from the stubbornly barren soil. He watched as the gardener carefully transplanted a small, struggling rosebush, its leaves yellowed and withered. He spoke to it softly, his voice a low murmur lost in the city's cacophony. There was something in the way he handled the plant, a gentle reverence, a deep understanding of its needs. An idea, fragile and desperate, began to take root in Park's mind. He knew it was irrational, perhaps even foolish, but he had nothing left to lose. He found the gardener later that afternoon, kneeling beside a patch of sunflowers, their faces turned towards the weak sunlight. "Excuse me," Park began, his voice hoarse. I've seen you working in the garden." The old man looked up, his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Yes, I am the gardener. Can I help you?" His voice was surprisingly strong, filled with a quiet strength. Park hesitated, unsure how to articulate the impossible request that had formed in his mind. "My son, he's very sick. The doctors, they've given up." The gardener nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. He didn't offer empty platitudes or false reassurances. He simply listened. I don't know what to do," Park continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I saw you with the rosebush and the sunflowers. You seem to understand life, even when it's struggling." He took a deep breath, bracing himself for the inevitable dismissal. "I was wondering if you could build something for Min-jun, something that could help him." The gardener remained silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning Park's face. Then he nodded again, a slow, deliberate movement. "I will see what I can do," he said. "Tell me about your son." Park hesitated, surprised by the gardener's acceptance. He had expected skepticism, pity, perhaps even a gentle rebuff. Instead, he found a quiet willingness, a spark of hope in the face of overwhelming despair. He poured out his heart, describing Min-jun's playful spirit, his love for drawing spaceships and telling fantastical stories, his unwavering optimism even as his body betrayed him. He spoke of the dreams he had for his son, dreams that were now slipping away like sand through his fingers. The gardener listened patiently, his gaze never wavering, absorbing Park's grief and desperation. When Park finally fell silent, exhausted and emotionally drained, the gardener spoke. "He needs light," he said simply, "and air, and something to remind him of the world outside these walls." Park frowned, confused. "But he's too weak to go outside. The doctors—" The gardener raised a hand, silencing him. "I am not a doctor. I cannot heal his body, but I can build something that will nourish his spirit." And so, the gardener began to build. He worked in the small garden patch, his movements slow and deliberate, his hands calloused but gentle. He gathered discarded pieces of wood, scraps of metal, and colorful stones. He collected seeds from the sunflowers and carefully nurtured them in small pots. He hummed softly as he worked, a tuneless melody that seemed to blend with the rustling of the leaves and the chirping of the birds. Park watched him, mesmerized. He didn't understand what the gardener was creating, but he felt a sense of purpose, a flicker of hope that had been extinguished for so long. He started to spend more time in the garden, drawn to the gardener's quiet strength and unwavering dedication. He learned his name was Mr. Kim, a man of few words but deep wisdom. Mr. Kim never spoke directly about Minjun's illness, but he shared stories of the plants he tended, their resilience, their ability to adapt and thrive even in the harshest conditions. He spoke of the interconnectedness of all living things, the delicate balance of nature, and the importance of finding beauty and meaning in the simplest of things. As the days turned into weeks, Mr. Kim's creation began to take shape. It was a small, enclosed structure, a miniature greenhouse built against the wall of the hospital. One side was made of clear glass, allowing sunlight to stream in. Inside, he planted a miniature garden filled with colorful flowers, fragrant herbs, and small, leafy trees. A tiny waterfall trickled down a moss-covered rock, creating a soothing sound. Park was awestruck. It was a miniature paradise, a vibrant oasis in the sterile landscape of the hospital. He didn't understand how it could possibly help Minjun, but he knew, instinctively, that it was something special. When it was finally finished, Mr. Kim led Park to Minjun's room. The boy was sleeping, his face pale and gaunt. Mr. Kim gently woke him, his voice soft and reassuring. "Minjun, he said. "I have something to show you." Minjun blinked, his eyes struggling to focus. He looked at Mr. Kim, then at Park, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What is it?" he whispered, his voice weak. Mr. Kim smiled. "A surprise," he said. "Let's go." Park carefully lifted Minjun from the bed, cradling him in his arms. He carried him down the hallway, his heart pounding with anticipation. When they reached the garden, Minjun gasped. His eyes widened, taking in the vibrant colors, the lush greenery, the gentle sound of the waterfall. He reached out a trembling hand, touching a delicate petal of a bright red rose. "It's beautiful," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Mr. Kim carefully placed Minjun inside the miniature greenhouse, settling him on a small wooden bench. The sunlight streamed through the glass, warming his skin. He looked around, his eyes sparkling with delight. "It's like a secret garden," he said. From that day on, Minjun spent every possible moment in the miniature greenhouse. He would sit for hours, surrounded by the vibrant plants, listening to the soothing sound of the waterfall. He would draw pictures of the flowers, write stories about the tiny creatures that inhabited the garden, and talk to Mr. Kim about the mysteries of nature. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Minjun began to change. His eyes regained their sparkle, his cheeks their color. He started to eat more, his appetite returning with a vengeance. He even began to walk again, his steps tentative at first, but growing stronger with each passing day. The doctors were baffled. They ran tests, consulted with specialists, but they couldn't explain the boy's remarkable recovery. The tumor, they said, was still there, but it seemed to have stopped growing. It was as if Minjun's body had found a way to coexist with the disease, to draw strength from the miniature garden and the peace it provided. One afternoon, Park found Minjun sitting in the greenhouse, sketching in his notebook. He was humming softly, a tuneless melody that echoed Mr. Kim's. Park sat beside him, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "You know," Minjun said, without looking up, "I think the garden is magic." Park smiled, stroking his son's hair. "I think you're right," he said. He looked at the vibrant plants, the sparkling waterfall, the boy who was slowly but surely returning to life. He knew that the garden wasn't a cure, that it couldn't erase the reality of Minjun's illness. But it had given them something precious: hope. It had reminded them of the beauty and resilience of life, even in the face of death. It had given Minjun a reason to fight, a reason to live. And that, Park realized, was the greatest miracle of all. The gardener hadn't cured his son, but he had given him a reason to heal. He had built something that nourished his spirit, something that reminded him of the world outside those sterile hospital walls, something that whispered of life and hope and the enduring power of nature. The garden was a testament to the power of human connection, the importance of finding beauty in the midst of suffering, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, miracles are possible. Mr. Kim, the unassuming gardener, had given them more than they could have ever hoped for. He had given them a second chance. Park knew he had to thank Mr. Kim, to somehow express the immensity of his gratitude. He found the gardener tending to the rose bushes outside the main entrance, his hands stained with earth, his face serene as always. "Mr. Kim," Park began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you. What you've done for Minjun." He trailed off, unable to find the words to adequately convey his feelings. The gardener simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that seemed to reach into Park's very soul. "There is no need for thanks, Mr. Park," he said, his voice a low, calming murmur. "I simply offered a space for life to bloom. The rest was Minjun's own doing." Park shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. "But you knew, didn't you? You knew that this garden would help him." Mr. Kim paused, clipping a dead bloom from a rose bush. "I knew that connecting with nature, with beauty, could awaken something within him. A will to live, a sense of peace. Plants, like children, respond to love and care. They thrive when given the right environment." He looked at Park, his eyes filled with compassion. Minjun needed a place to thrive, a place to remember what it means to be alive. Park felt a surge of understanding. It wasn't just the physical beauty of the garden, it was the connection it fostered, the sense of peace and tranquility it provided. It was a reminder that even in the face of illness and despair, life continued to bloom, to flourish, to offer hope. "Dr. Lee wants to run more tests," Park said, a hint of anxiety creeping into his voice. "He's perplexed. He doesn't understand how Minjun could be improving like this." Mr. Kim nodded slowly. "Science has its limits, Mr. Park. Sometimes, the greatest healing comes from within, from a place that science cannot reach." Park knew he was right. He had spent so long relying on doctors and treatments, on the cold, hard facts of medicine. He had almost forgotten the power of hope, the importance of nurturing the spirit. "What do I tell Dr. Lee?" Park asked, feeling lost and unsure. "Tell him the truth," Mr. Kim replied. "Tell him that Minjun is finding strength in the garden, that he is connecting with something larger than himself. Tell him that sometimes the best medicine is not a pill or a procedure, but a connection to the natural world, a reminder of the beauty and resilience of life." Park took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of resolve. He would tell Dr. Lee the truth, and he would continue to support Minjun's journey, wherever it might lead. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, they had the garden, and they had the quiet wisdom of Mr. Kim, the unassuming gardener who had shown them the path to hope. That evening, Park found Dr. Lee in his office, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on his tired face. He looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his features as Park entered. "Mr. Park," Dr. Lee said, his voice weary. "I was just reviewing Minjun's latest tests. I must admit, I'm baffled." His white blood cell count is still elevated, but his overall condition has improved significantly. His energy levels are up, he's eating better, and he's even started to gain a little weight. It's inexplicable. Park took a seat, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I think I know why, Dr. Lee. The doctor raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical. Oh, and what explanation do you have, Mr. Park? Park hesitated, unsure how to articulate what he had learned. It's the garden, Dr. Lee. The garden Mr. Kim built. Min-jun spends hours there every day. He says it makes him feel alive. Dr. Lee chuckled softly, a dismissive sound. A garden? Mr. Park, with all due respect, I appreciate your concern, but I'm a medical professional. I deal with scientific facts, not gardening whims. Park stood his ground. I understand your skepticism, Dr. Lee, but I've seen it with my own eyes. Min-jun is different since he started spending time in that garden. He's happier, he's stronger, he's fighting. And I believe that the garden, the connection with nature, is playing a vital role in his recovery. He recounted his conversation with Mr. Kim, explaining the gardener's philosophy, his belief in the healing power of nature, his understanding of the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. He told Dr. Lee about the peace and tranquility Min-jun found in the garden, the way he seemed to draw strength from the vibrant plants and the gentle sounds of the waterfall. Dr. Lee listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When Park finished, he sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Mr. Park, I admire your dedication to your son, but I can't simply ignore the science. Min-jun is still very ill. His condition remains critical. While I'm happy that he's finding some comfort in the garden, I can't attribute his improvement solely to that. We need to continue with the medical treatments, the medications, the monitoring. I'm not saying we should abandon the treatments, Dr. Lee, Park said earnestly. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, there's more to healing than just medicine. Maybe the garden is helping Min-jun in ways that we don't fully understand. Maybe it's giving him the strength to fight, the hope to keep going. Dr. Lee was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the wall behind Park. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer than before. Mr. Park, I've been a doctor for over 20 years. I've seen countless patients come and go. Some recover, some don't. And sometimes, I admit, I don't understand why. I don't understand why some people cling to life with every fiber of their being, while others simply give up. I don't understand why some people respond to treatment, while others don't. And I certainly don't understand how a garden could possibly have such a profound effect on a child with a terminal illness. He paused, taking a deep breath. But I'm willing to consider it. I'm willing to acknowledge that there might be more to healing than just what I learned in medical school. I'm willing to admit that sometimes the greatest miracles come from unexpected places. A glimmer of hope flickered in Park's heart. So, you'll support it? You'll support Min-jun spending time in the garden? Dr. Lee nodded slowly. Yes, Mr. Park. I will. As long as it doesn't interfere with his medical treatments, I will support whatever makes him happy, whatever gives him hope. Because in the end, that's all we have, isn't it? Hope. He offered Park a small, weary smile. Perhaps I'll even visit the garden myself. Maybe I can learn something from Mr. Kim. Over the next few weeks, Min-jun continued to spend hours in the garden every day. He would sit by the waterfall, listening to the soothing sound of the water, or wander among the flowers, his eyes wide with wonder. He would talk to the plants, telling them his secrets, sharing his hopes and fears. And slowly, steadily, he began to heal. His energy levels increased, his appetite improved, and his color returned. He laughed more, he played more, and he seemed more alive. Even Dr. Lee, who remained cautiously optimistic, couldn't deny the remarkable transformation. He started visiting the garden regularly, often sitting in silence beside Min-jun, observing the boy's interaction with the natural world. One afternoon, Park found Dr. Lee sitting on a bench near the rose bushes, his gaze lost in the beauty of the flowers. He sat down beside him, a comfortable silence settling between them. It's remarkable, isn't it? Dr. Lee said softly, his voice filled with awe. I've never seen anything like it. Park nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. Mr. Kim calls it the power of connection. The connection to nature, the connection to beauty, the connection to life. Dr. Lee sighed, a wistful expression on his face. I think he's right. We've become so disconnected from the natural world, so focused on technology and medicine, that we've forgotten the simple things, the things that truly nourish the soul. We've forgotten the power of hope, the importance of beauty, the miracle of life. He turned to Park, his eyes filled with a newfound understanding. Thank you, Mr. Park. Thank you for showing me that there's more to healing than just medicine. Thank you for reminding me what it means to be human. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Min-jun continued to improve. His white blood cell count slowly decreased, his energy levels continued to rise, and his overall health steadily improved. Eventually, Dr. Lee declared him to be in remission. It wasn't a cure, he cautioned, but it was a significant victory. Min-jun would still need regular checkups and ongoing monitoring, but he was finally able to leave the hospital and return home. The day Min-jun left the hospital, he insisted on saying goodbye to Mr. Kim. Park wheeled him down to the garden, where they found the gardener tending to the vegetable patch. Min-jun ran to him, throwing his arms around his legs. Thank you, Mr. Kim, he exclaimed, his voice filled with joy. Thank you for the garden. Thank you for making me better. Mr. Kim smiled, ruffling Min-jun's hair. You made yourself better, Min-jun, he said gently. I just gave you a place to bloom. Park watched them, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He knew that Min-jun's journey was far from over, but he also knew that they had been given a second chance. They had been given the gift of hope, the gift of life, the gift of a miracle. And he knew that they would never forget the unassuming gardener who had shown them the way. The garden remained a sanctuary, a place of healing and peace, not just for Min-jun, but for all who sought solace within its walls. Dr. Lee continued to visit regularly, often bringing his own patients to experience the therapeutic power of nature. And Mr. Kim continued to tend to the garden, nurturing the plants, nurturing the souls, and reminding everyone that even in the darkest of times, miracles are always possible. The homecoming was joyous, filled with laughter and the sweet scent of home-cooked meals. Min-jun reveled in the simple pleasures he had missed, playing with his toys, sleeping in his own bed, and being surrounded by the unwavering love of his father. Park, though still vigilant, allowed himself to breathe a little easier, the constant knot of anxiety in his stomach loosening its grip. But Park knew the remission was fragile. Dr. Lee had been clear. Vigilance was key. So, in addition to the regular checkups, Park resolved to bring the garden home. He contacted Mr. Kim, explaining his plan to recreate a miniature version of the hospital garden in their backyard. It's a beautiful idea, Mr. Park, Mr. Kim had said, his voice warm with encouragement. But remember, it's not just about the plants. It's about the connection, the intention, the love you put into it. And so, Park began. He cleared a patch of land, tilling the soil with his own hands. He consulted with Mr. Kim on the best plants to cultivate, choosing those that had particularly resonated with Min-jun during his time at the hospital. Roses, sunflowers, lavender, and even a small patch of vegetables, each carefully selected and lovingly planted. Min-jun, though still weak, would sit by the window, watching his father work. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he directed Park, pointing out where each plant should go. Slowly, painstakingly, the garden began to take shape. One day, as Park was building a small waterfall feature, mimicking the one in the hospital garden, Min-jun came outside. He was pale and unsteady, but his determination was unwavering. "Appa," he said softly, reaching for Park's hand. "Can I help?" Park hesitated, his protective instincts flaring. "Min-jun, you need to rest." "But I want to help," Min-jun insisted, his eyes pleading. "I want to make the garden beautiful." Park relented, knowing that denying Min-jun's desire to participate would be more harmful than allowing him to exert himself slightly. He carefully guided Min-jun, showing him how to place the stones around the waterfall, how to gently water the newly planted flowers. As they worked side by side, a profound sense of peace settled over them. It wasn't just about building a garden. It was about building a life, a future, a shared space of hope and healing. Weeks turned into months, and the garden flourished. Minjun grew stronger, his laughter ringing through the air as he chased butterflies among the flowers. The garden became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the worries and anxieties of the outside world. One afternoon, as Minjun was playing in the garden, Dr. Lee came to visit. He walked slowly, taking in the vibrant colors and the fragrant scents, a look of profound contentment on his face. "You've done an incredible job, Mr. Park," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "This is truly remarkable." Park smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "It's all thanks to Minjun," he said, gesturing to his son. "He's the one who brings it to life." Dr. Lee sat down on a bench beside Minjun, watching him play. "I've been doing some research," he said quietly, "on the effects of nature on healing. It's astonishing. The impact on the immune system, on stress levels, on overall well-being. We're only just beginning to understand the power of the natural world." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I'm thinking of incorporating horticultural therapy into my practice. Creating a garden at the hospital, a place where patients can connect with nature and find solace." Park nodded, his heart filled with hope. "That's a wonderful idea, Dr. Lee. I think it could make a real difference." As the years passed, Minjun continued to thrive. The garden remained his sanctuary, a place where he could connect with nature, find peace, and nurture his spirit. He grew into a kind, compassionate young man, deeply appreciative of the life he had been given. One spring morning, Park found Minjun sitting in the garden, sketching in a notebook. He sat down beside him, a comfortable silence settling between them. "What are you drawing, Minjun?" he asked gently. Minjun smiled, showing him the sketch. It was a drawing of the garden, vibrant with color and detail. "I'm drawing our miracle," he said softly. "I want to remember this always." Park wrapped his arm around Minjun, pulling him close. "Me too," he whispered. "Me too." Years later, after Park had passed away peacefully in his sleep, Minjun inherited the house and the garden. He became a doctor, inspired by Dr. Lee's compassion and the healing power of nature. He dedicated his life to helping others, always remembering the lessons he had learned in the garden. He expanded the garden, adding new plants, new features, new spaces for healing and reflection. He turned it into a sanctuary for his patients, a place where they could connect with nature, find hope, and discover their own inner strength. And every day, he would walk through the garden, tending to the plants, remembering his father, and honoring the unassuming gardener who had shown them the way. He knew that the miracle of the garden wasn't just about the plants or the soil or the sunshine. It was about the love, the connection, the unwavering belief in the power of hope. It was about the reminder that even in the darkest of times, miracles are always possible, and that sometimes the greatest healers are not doctors, but gardeners who cultivate the seeds of hope in the human heart. The garden stood as a testament to the enduring power of love, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the miracle of life. It was a legacy, not just for Minjun, but for all who sought solace and healing within its verdant embrace. And in its quiet beauty, the memory of Park Bo-gum and the wisdom of the gardener, Mr. Kim, lived on, whispering tales of hope and reminding everyone that even from the most barren of landscapes, life, in its most vibrant and miraculous form, could always bloom.